We are back with another episode of the Do As I Say, Not As I Did podcast. And as always, the name kind of explains everything. We're giving you advice based on everything we did wrong the first time. Well, at least everything I did wrong the first time. Each week I bring on founders, investors, product experts, podcast hosts, technology futurists, sales gurus, just about anyone who is really smart and can help us work out how to build a great business. And then together we answer the questions about what is going on in your lives and in your businesses. We either get that from people sending them in or we find them on Reddit, but we just want to find real problems to workshop. And the guests I bring on have never seen these questions before, so they're hearing it for the first time the same as you. So if you do have questions or you're trying to put out fires, send an email through to us and we're going to workshop it on the podcast. So send those emails through to podcast@joelditrapani.com. I'm your host, Joel Ditrapani, and I'm the co-founder and co-CEO of Vigo, which is an edtech scale-up. We've grown it through Australia and the UK, and we're now focused on the US. On top of that, I'm also an advisor and a coach in the product space where I help startups and businesses really avoid the mistakes that I made for a long time and work out how to run great product teams, because that's how you build great products. And today, I'm super excited and kind of shocked to be joined by Danny Miranda, the host of the Danny Miranda podcast, a podcast with the ambition of selling out Madison Square Garden, and a podcast with one of the most incredible guest lineups you could possibly imagine, with interviews with Alex Hormozi, Seth Godin, Gary Vaynerchuk, and over 400 others on top of that. What I admire most about Danny is that he is truly an independent thinker. Throughout his life and his career, deep curiosity has shone through, allowing him to always ask the right questions and challenge the path that he was taking. And because of that, Danny has experienced more than most people think is even possible. Whether it was starting and failing his first blog at 14, successfully launching multiple of his own businesses, podcasting about NFTs, or even creating dropshipping courses, his journey has constantly been marked by an unquenchable desire to learn and contribute to others. Danny is an absolute expert at aligning his own life, and every bit of effort he puts into the world is an intentional decision about working towards a life he wants to lead. So let's jump into it. Welcome, Danny, mate. Thank you so much for coming on today.
What an introduction. Oh my God. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I could see how much thought and effort was put into that. And I'm really grateful for you saying all those things about me.
Man, it's easy to find nice things when someone puts so much positivity in the world. But look, before we jump into our challenges today, tell me, what problems are you personally wrestling with right now?
What problems am I wrestling with? I think I'm trying to figure out how to be even more in the present moment and how to use my gifts to light up the world even more. I feel like I'm doing that with the podcast. I feel like I do that every day when I just walk around, but I'm challenging myself recently to just do it even more. Like, how can I be a little more present? How can I make the extra joke at the grocery store? How can I make eye contact with the stranger and actually say the thing that's on my mind? That's where all my gifts lie. And that's where my greatest quote unquote problem is, trying to expand the surface area of that gift that I have of human connection to more and more, instead of just plugging into my ear pods. How can I actually connect with other human beings all the time?
Have you made any changes to actually implement that?
No real hard and fast rules. This is kind of a relatively new challenge to myself, but I just noticed I'm spending less time listening to stuff when I'm out and about and more time actually tapping into the present moment and knowing that the present moment is all there ever is. And this is a perfect moment and you can't do anything wrong. So let's just give some joy to people in the process.
I love it. I have headphones on 100% of the time. So maybe when I go out tomorrow for a coffee, I'm going to go headphoneless and try and, be present with myself.
And just notice one thing, right? Like, what's going on around you. You'll notice something that you otherwise hadn't. And listen, I love that. I love headphones. I love AirPods. They're the craziest invention ever. And they're so helpful to me in so many ways. I'm wearing them right now. But it's like, how can we really tune in to the magic that's unfolding all around us at all times? And that's kind of what the problem, quote unquote, problem that I'm facing right now. Very good problem to have from my perspective.
I love it, man. Well, look, to the rest of the audience, I don't normally ask questions on this show. This is deliberately not an interview podcast. And it's because, people do great interviews like Danny. But since I have one of the best question askers in the world, I thought I'd at least try and ask one question. Because, Danny, I thought I want to try and understand a little bit more about how you think about the world of business. So I've done some thinking, and I've got at least one question to ask before we jump into the challenges today. In 2018, you said, the credit card is one of the smartest inventions of all time. Since then, the way you see the world has changed a lot, and you've spoken to some of the smartest people to ever grace this planet. Now, what do you think the smartest invention ever is, or the smartest invention in the world is?
My mind, that's hilarious that I said that in 2018. I think the internet is up there. I think that like fire is up there for sure. Light. But all these things that are so good, I'm just thinking about like all the negatives to them as well. Like, for example, light bulbs and the ability to have light. It's like, that's an incredible invention, but like, wasn't the world better when we just went with light that was coming from the sun? I don't know, man. Maybe the wheel's got to be up there because so much transportation. I think the problem is I have so many different perspectives. In 2018, if you were reading my tweets back then, it's so black and white. And there was so much fear in the things that I was saying. And it was so oriented and driven towards money. And now I just view the world in a completely with different glasses on, it seems like. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the greatest invention of all time is, but it's a great question. And one that I'm going to steal from you for sure.
I love it. It's so interesting to see like how dramatically your perspective has changed with that question. Because it's so clear, back then in your dropshipping days, like everything was so focused on, ROI and making money and like that was what was going to lead to happiness. And like credit card is a great answer, and credit card is a great invention, for different reasons. But like now, like the things that you're saying, like have nothing to do, like with any, like you're thinking, like millennia before the credit card even came into existence, which is so interesting.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's just, I think the more life you live, the more perspectives you gain. And I've just gone through rapid perspective enhancer over the past 3 years with the podcast. And it's just like, you just see the world so differently. And the more you do this, the more you'll see like, this is crazy. Like this person views this way and this person does this. And it's just like, the reason why it's not overwhelming is because it enriches my life so much. Like to have more perspectives enriches your life. Like if you travel to so many different countries, you're going to have a richer life. You're going to be able to experience life more richly. You're not going to get bogged down by all the perspectives. You're going to be excited and more nuanced. And so that's kind of how I feel. It's like I've traveled to 400 different places, and those places just happen to be human beings who I get to talk to and learn from.
I love it, man. Well, look, I don't normally go down the question path, and I probably won't again. But I'm glad that my one crack at it stumped you. So I'm gonna keep that as a little accolade of mine. So we'll jump into the challenges for today. Now, I always try and like focus my questions around my guest's experience or my co-host's experience, really. And I was trying to like work out where can Danny add the most value, and I thought it's really all about the human experience. Even though you've seen, like wildly different levels of success in different businesses you've taken on and with the podcast, I figured where I think you can add the most value and where I was personally just most interested to hear your opinions was with the human experience. So that's where I've tried to keep all of our questions today. So we'll jump into the first challenge. This challenge is called How to Announce the Death of My Startup. So I founded a startup like 8 months ago, and now I believe that I need to shut it down and pursue something else. The thing is, I was consistently posting on LinkedIn about my startup. So how should I announce its death without looking like a complete loser? From The Liar. I didn't come with these names. That's a real name. This person's obviously feeling pretty down. But man, that's a hard spot to be. What do you think this person's going through? How do you reckon they deal with that?
So you were looking at my tweets from 2018. I had to do the same thing myself. And for me, I was doing drop shipping at the time, and at a certain point I realized that wasn't in alignment with the person that I wanted to be. And so I kind of like looked at myself in third person and was like, oh no, like that's not the person that I want to be. And if I'm not what I'm posting as, then who am I? And so I imagine that's what this person is going through right now. And the answer is you need to gain more perspective on yourself. And I don't think you necessarily need to post anything on LinkedIn immediately. Like take a break from it. You're posting as something because you believe that what you're putting out there into the world is going to be something that is going to give you something and the truth is you're whole just right now, just the way you are. And you could post on something completely different tomorrow and it could be all good and people will probably think about it less than you could imagine. But if you're having difficulty with that, to me, the first thing I go to is like, take a step back, get off LinkedIn for a month, for 3 months, for 6 months, get to understand yourself better. Because the reason why you were posting like you were for the past 8 months is because you thought that was going to lead to success, but you didn't know yourself before you started. Because if you knew yourself, you wouldn't have any problem saying, hey, what I did failed, but you're scared, you're insecure about looking like a failure. And those are my initial thoughts. What about you, Joel?
Yeah, man, it must be so, like, I can't imagine, like, the liar must be in so much pain, and I think the reason is that you've linked your identity so closely to what you're doing. So like when this business is failing, it feels like you're failing.
Yeah.
And everyone always says, it's the same trope in startup advice, like, you're separate from your business. Like that's true, but it's so hard to understand. It's so hard to believe, and it's so hard to act like that. It's so hard to actually be that because, you pour so much of yourself into it. And like, I don't know, what I would just say is that you did something. That's fucking awesome. Like most people will never do anything like that. Most people will never take the plunge. Like you had a crack and you did it for 8 months and you were so proud of it and you put it out into the world. Like you've achieved a great deal more than most people dream of. Like most people think about like, I'd love to start something. And like they go the whole life like, I had this great idea, but then I saw, Instagram did it and they became $1 billion company. Like you had a crack. It didn't work. Have another crack. You've learned so much in this 8 months and that's totally allowed. That's absolutely allowed. But I think, you aren't your startup, which means that you aren't the failure. Like you did something and you've taken a step more than most. But I also agree so much with what you're saying, Danny. Like to take a step back, to take a step back and look after yourself and look inward and spend some time with yourself because you need to almost rediscover who you are. Because you've given yourself to this thing, to this startup, and it sounds like maybe you've lost yourself a little bit in that process.
What comes to mind for me too is like failure is good. Like what if the whole thesis is that failure is bad and that failure will lead to people making fun of me? But what if the reframe was what Sarah Blakely said her dad taught her when she was growing up? Sarah Blakely, billionaire founder of Spanx, when she was growing up, her dad said to her at the dinner table, "How did you fail today?" And if she didn't have anything to respond with, her dad was upset. Meaning her dad was encouraging failure. Her dad was saying failure was a good thing and that you need to have failure in order to get to the place you want to get to. So just become comfortable with it. So I think there's an inherent in that question, a lack of comfort with failure. And the more comfortable you get with failure, the more successes you will inevitably achieve.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like use this. If nothing else, you've just learned a shitload. So get okay with it. But it's going to be painful. Surround yourself with the right people and spend some time. Focusing on the positives of what you're taking out of this. But look, I'll try and bring this question to a close with a liar. So the final judgment here is, mate, you've done an incredible thing. Don't see this whole thing as a failure because you've done more than most people in their life can ever even try. So you've taken a step that many would be jealous of. And then the second thing would be just take some time to yourself, rediscover who you are, unlink this 8-month project from who you are. You've been alive for longer than 8 months, you're more than just this 8-month stint, and spend some time to trying to rediscover who that is and what you care about it and what the next steps are. And the third thing is you don't need to post about it. Who cares? Like most people probably just don't care that much. They definitely don't care as much as you. So they probably will just forget that you even posted about it. You just might be at a party with someone in a few months. They're like, oh, what happened to that thing? I'm like, oh, I'd do something else now. That's all you need to say.
Yeah.
All right, the liar.
It's not a big deal.
You've been advised. Yeah, it's absolutely not a big deal. All right, we'll move on. You've been advised, the liar. This next question, or this next challenge is called, how the fuck am I supposed to be a leader? I went to my college's matchmaking group for people with ideas and people who want to be part of a startup. I pitched my idea. I thought I spoke too fast and did not make any sense, and to my surprise, 3 people actually showed interest and are willing to work with me. I feel like there are 2 parts of me that are contending inside of me. The part of me that is painfully insecure and shy, wanting to be liked, hate telling people what to do, thinking that I don't have enough training. The part that cringes at everything I do or say or think. Then there's this other part of me that just has the drive, that stays up late designing, researching, that just wants to burst and have a schedule, weekly meetings and daily updates, wants everyone on their A game and just getting out there and working hard. That people are interested in having that passion. I just need to step up a leader, and I feel like I don't know what I'm doing. Any advice? How do I get started? How do I contend with these 2 things? From Alternative Movies.
Alternative movies. Here's the thing. You're always leading because you're always leading yourself. And sometimes you're leading that person who's insecure, and sometimes you're leading that person who's getting their work done. But you are, I always never understood or resonated with leadership because I was like, I'm just one person. Who am I leading? Truth is, I'm leading myself at all times. So that reframe really helped me. And if I could just tell other people what I tell myself, well, all of a sudden now you go from leading just one person to leading 3 and to leading 5 to leading 10 to on and on and on. And so I think life is a matter of increasing your personality in certain areas at the right time. What I mean by this is like LeBron James playing basketball is a phenomenal basketball player. But that part of his personality is not on display when he's with his kids. That's just the part of his personality that gets exposed and increased at one specific time. So for this guy or gal, it could be how does he or she increase the exposure of the personality that is energetic and researching and doing what they need to be doing at the appropriate time? How do they build that out so that when they're in class or when they're actually supposed to be leading, they do? That's my challenge to the person writing. And I'm curious what you have to say about it as well.
I just say, this is so normal. Like, I think you'd have to be a sociopath to never feel this as you're going through your own journey. You're doing something like starting a startup or starting a business or any kind of like venture on your own. It feels impossible in a lot of ways. Like the odds are stacked against you. So it feels hard because it is hard. But you've done something incredible so far, and you do have this person, this part of your personality which is just like ambitious and driven and hungry, and it's making you take these steps, and like you've got to lean into that right now. But like feeling like you're not good enough or that you don't have the skills or the experience, like that's totally normal. That's just imposter syndrome. That's happening now, and at different levels of the journey, it happens again. Like personally for myself, I feel imposter syndrome on like a cyclical basis. I take on new responsibilities. I feel like a huge imposter. I get better and get better and better. And then all of a sudden, I'm good at that set of responsibilities. And finally, as I start to feel good and I feel confident, I take on a new set of responsibilities and I feel like an imposter again. So I think it's normal to feel like an imposter at different points in time. And just know like that's totally normal and that's totally okay. You're not on your own. And a lot of founders out there can resonate with you, and so if you speak to other founders, they can talk you through this absolutely. But I guess on top of that, just it's normal, but don't let it stop you. You've already done something great. Capitalize on this momentum. That there's 2 parts contending. Logically which part should win. Let that hungry part win. Lean into that hungry part. Lean into the desire. Lean into like that drive that you have, and just keep on going. Like get these people. Because at the end of the day, I actually believe that no one really knows what they're doing. everyone's kind of making it up at every stage. Like, so these people also don't really know either. It's not like they've run a business before. Like, so just go in knowing that like you've got the right ambition, you've got the right drive, and you're all going to work it out together. There's no exact right path in a startup. So as long as you have a crack, like I think that's more important than anything else.
Yeah, man. And just the idea that like when you're challenging yourself and doing new things, you're always going to feel like you don't know, or you're going to be working through a problem. And I think, the more you can get comfortable with the idea of not knowing, of working yourself through a problem, the better you're going to be. And I think really well said on your part.
I appreciate that. I brought Danny on for the compliments, so hopefully he keeps peppering them in. But I guess, Danny, have there been times in your life where you felt like you weren't good enough, and did you use any tactics to overcome that?
I remember in 7th grade when I didn't make the basketball team. It was the first time in my life I'd felt like really rejected by life, just crying nonstop in the locker room. And I was like, oh, what I wish I told myself back then was, you can be different. What I actually told myself was, I'm never playing basketball again. And I didn't really. And I think that, a lot of times we get hit with these roadblocks and you say to yourself, oh, wow, like I don't have to do any more work. I don't need any more responsibility. The truth can be, you can just get better at that role. You can read The 360-Degree Leader by John Maxwell. You could read some of John Gordon's books. You could pick up a book on leadership. Listen to a podcast on leadership by people who have led hundreds of people. The Score Takes Care of Itself by Bill Walsh. It's like you read these books and you're like, oh, wow, like I can get better at this skill. So I think that what I wish I told myself back then was like, this is just one moment. It doesn't define you, and you can actually get better. Simple concept, but when you really feel it and have seen the ways in which your life has gotten better as a result of you putting an effort towards something, you realize you're unstoppable. So that's what my advice to this person as well.
Yeah. That is great advice. And I think I'm going to use that to pull this one together and wrap this one up. So alternative movies. This starts in your mind, just because you feel like this doesn't mean it's true. You've got these two contending personalities that are fighting against each other, two different parts of you. That's the first step. But like Danny said, you don't have to stop here. You can be different. You can change. You can become who you want. So understand that and make that decision and own that, and then let that driven, hungry part of you push you forward to that future or to that person that you want to become. And then, just also know that you're not on your own here and that you can learn. People have been leaders forever. So that means there's a lot of great information about people becoming great leaders, about how to become great leaders. So find the books, find the podcasts, find the blogs, find the Reddit threads, listen to this podcast, all of the episodes at once, and you'll become a great leader, I promise. But also, surround yourself with great people. One thing that I always spend a lot of time doing is being very intentional about my peer group. Get great peers, get great mentors, and get an advisor and a coach. Surround yourself with people, because these early stages, although it's not like exactly what you have to do, there are patterns here that people have seen a lot of times that you can reduce the mistakes there. So you can have someone that gives you that confidence, that can help you and validate your ideas for good or for better or for worse. So surround yourself with the right people as well. And then I missed there, Danny, with a sum up.
No, I think that was perfect. Very well said.
Right.
The last thing I'll say is Deion Sanders. Go check out some Deion Sanders if you want to become a better leader.
All right. So look, alternative movies, you've been advised. We take all that in, action, and come back and let us know. All right, we'll move into the next challenge. This challenge is called, I have 9 projects I want to do. 2 are startups, 1's a Kickstarter, 2 are blogs, and a course. I'm having a hard time prioritizing, and I also have a permanent job. I want to hopefully launch all of them this year. I'm looking for any tips on time management for multiple projects. I'm solo working on all of it. From Resinico.
Resinico, what's the through line between all of them is what I'm curious about. And And also, which one is closest to the thing or things you were doing as a child? You know, it's an incredible problem to have that you have too many things you want to work on, because a lot of people are in the situation of having zero. I know at certain points in my life, I felt like I had zero projects that I was meaningfully invested in. So having too many is a great problem to have. And I have no doubt that if they are all needed, you will get them all done. But that is over a period of decades, not a period of 1 year, 1 month, 1 day, 1 moment. And yeah, I think the advice here is to have somebody you're accountable to and be like, I am just working on this one thing for a month or 3 months. Like, set a time frame, because you're never, from my vantage point, if you're by yourself working on all of these at the same time, they're not going to get anywhere, at least not to a meaningful extent. And so maybe you've dabbled with them, but in your heart, you know, like, all right, this one has the most potential. Follow that and be accountable to someone and work on it for 1 month. And then if you're not finding enjoyment, see, like, what happens when you're involved in 9 projects, you're getting like some of the high of working on the project from just creating another thing to work on. And I think that you just need to focus on one for 1 month, let's say, and then we'll reevaluate from there. What do you say, Joe?
Don't do 9. Like, it's objectively the wrong thing to do. Like, I just can't imagine a world where you're going to make meaningful progress on any of them. Like, we only have so much bandwidth. We only have so much creativity that we can use at one time. So you just need to get really focused. And I think you just need to pick one. Like, that doesn't mean you don't have to do them ever again. Just put them on ice. You know, if you like them, you'll come back to them. But just get clear. Choose one and just go really fucking hard on it. And that's it. Because, you know, one thing you said, Danny, I think is a really good point here, is that when you're doing 9, you get the high of all of them. But projects have shit parts too. And you can only make the progress you need if you go through the shit parts. It's not all highs. And so if you're just looking on the highs, you're going to be making like 1 step here, 1 step there, and you're going to end up in the same place. You're walking in different directions. So just get clear, pick one and leave the others. Just, I guess, you know, you said one thing though that I want to dig into. What do you mean, do the one that was closest to what you're doing as a child?
Yeah, I think that if I look at the things that have sustained in my life, they are closest to what I was doing as a child. Like, I think in some sense we're imprinted with the pursuits that we're trying to do that speak to our soul and help our soul evolve. That's what I believe in my heart. And I look at, you know, when I was 6 years old, I wrote a newspaper called the Sunny Times as an attempt to defeat the New York Times. And so if you look at today, what I'm doing, it's not selling trinkets. I'm creating media that expresses my opinions and getting the most out of other people to share. I'm creating media, right? I'm creating media today, and I was creating media back then. That was just what was the tools that were available at the time. So I think there's something there. And the more people that I've studied, the more that I've noticed the people who are doing the things that are true to them, they were also doing when no one could pay them, when it didn't matter. It was just what they needed to put out into the world for their heart, or they needed to do, or they needed to tinker with, or they needed to build. Like, there's a through line. So I think that's an important piece to hit on. I mean, what were you doing as a child, Joel, that you can see translates to your current reality?
I guess, you know, I'll come back to that question, but I want to dig a level deeper here. So okay. I think I saw a tweet recently where you said, you know, with the Danny Miranda podcast, you were doing it because you wanted to do it. It wasn't about the growth or anything like that. And when you're choosing to do a project or not, or a podcast or not, or like one of these 9 projects this person is doing, you said something along the lines of like, do the thing that you want to do, even if there's no financial incentive, or do the thing you want to do if it's not going to get big. Like, and I think like that's kind of the advice here that this person needs to take.
Yeah. Well, which one would you do if you knew it was a failure? And which one is a win even if you lost? I love that question. What of your 9 projects that if you lost it is still a win? For me, I knew, okay, I'm doing the podcast. I'm interviewing people. Guess what? No one listens. I still get to connect with those amazing people. That's a win for me. For someone else who hates interviewing, hates connecting with people, that's a loss for them. And so, like, I think that you need to find your version of that, in the 9 projects. How do you win? Even if you quote unquote lose, and figuring that out for yourself.
Yeah. I think, that's the only way to really decide here. So there's 9 projects on a table, and they're probably just all so exciting. But I think that's a really clarifying lens, which is, it's like, surely there's stuff on there that you're just doing because you think that's a good business opportunity.
Yeah.
And like, don't chase that.
Yeah.
Because I think you'll get found out in the end when your actions that you're taking out congruent with how you see the world and what you believe in.
And after 8 months, you'll be writing a post on LinkedIn being like, how do I say that I can't do this? You'll be the first person, right? And so that's what happens when you chase opportunities. That's what happened to me when I chased good opportunities, right? Where I got to go down this route. Okay, I can't. And this is not in alignment with my soul. And so I think finding the thing that you could do forever is the game. And you just don't want to be ever in that position of being like, I'm doing something just because I think it's going to give me this magazine cover. It's going to get me on this podcast. It's going to allow me to have this amount of money in my bank account. Like, those are the wrong reasons. But I think maybe you need to chase those to begin with. But yeah, Lord knows.
And then, you said another thing that I find quite interesting. That I want to dig into for this question, which is, you asked me, like, what was I doing as a kid? That it's like a through line. And I can think of something straight away. But that's like very likely, in my opinion, confirmation bias. Because like right now, I love asking questions. I know as a kid, I was like a deeply curious kid, and I would always people would be like, enough questions. And I do the same thing now. And that's why I love having a podcast. But I guess, like you said, when you're young, you're imprinted or something
your
along those
soul's
lines.
imprinted.
Your soul's imprinted. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess, like, does that mean you think your experiences as a child exclusively dictate where you end up in your life? Like, do you not think you're capable of change beyond that?
Of course you're capable of change. I just feel like there's too many examples of incredible performers who can look back of like, how was Tiger Woods doing that at 2 years old, right? Like, and yeah, he was training a lot. And to me, it's a matter of, even if it is confirmation bias, it's like a little extra thing that can push you in the right direction. It's like, if you have any evidence of the thing that you want to do, it's like, use that evidence. And so perhaps it is just a bias. Perhaps it's just confirmation. Perhaps your soul was not imprinted. I'm open to those possibilities. But also find the evidence and magnify it, right? That's what I've chosen to do. I've been like, look, I've been creating media since I was a kid. Look, I was consuming media. That's what I love doing. And so I'm going to magnify it. And that gives me more evidence to draw on when the moment gets difficult. And so how do you beat somebody who feels like they were destined? Like, truly feels like it's really difficult to, because that person's not going to stop. And so, yeah, that's my take on that. And I think for the person, it's like, find the evidence and make that evidence as big as possible, and find as many examples as you possibly can, so that when it gets difficult, which inevitably it will, where can you draw on as inspiration in that moment?
See, now that's a perspective I love. Create the narrative you need, because it will get hard. And when you don't have 9 projects, that means you're going to have shitty days in the one project you're focusing on. So I love that. Find the reason, blow it up, find the story, own the story, and make it your destiny. Own your destiny. build the narrative that leads to that. That's really fucking cool. Well, let's bring this one to a close here. Rizaniko, don't do 9 things. Like, just do one. And just get personal about it. Find which one you're really, really passionate about. Find the one, that you were destined to do. Find the one you're doing as a kid. Find the one that you want to do even if there's no financial outcome. Find the thing that's congruent with who you are. Make your actions match what you want to do and believe it. And then believe that story and just go so hard on it. And just, it might be hard to choose, but just choose one and have a crack. Give it a time frame. Give it a month or give it 3 months like Danny said, and just give it everything you've got and see where you get. See where you get in a month. See where you get in 3 months. And like you'll get a better picture after that as well if it is something you like doing. If those lows are worth it. If the highs are worth it. And and that's it. So just narrow up, get focused, man. Get real focused.
And the last thing I'll say on this is go out into nature and with no connection to anything, really spend time in nature after an hour of being disconnected from a phone, from AirPods, nothing, no talking to anyone, and say to yourself, which one is the right one? And I almost guarantee the answer will pop out to you. Maybe after 10 minutes of just being out there. So that's my advice.
All right. The Danny Miranda guarantee. Carpe diem. That's it's all locked in. All right. Well, that's all the challenges we have time for here. So we're going to come to the last section of the show, which is plugs. Now, I've got no proof for this, but I think it's the audience favorite part of the show. So tell us, Danny, what's going on? What do you want to plug?
I guess I'll plug my new course, Art of Interviewing, where I interview incredible entrepreneurs and creators. And I highlight all the lessons that I've learned in that time about showing how to do research and how to get incredible guests like you've managed to get on this show. Not me, but many others. And I think that's the thing that I'm most excited about. But I will say the podcast that I've done is the work behind the course that I've created. And the podcast is my love. And I want that podcast to just continue growing. I will continue putting energy into it every damn day because I love it so much. And because I love the guests that I have on so much and the audience. I mean, it's an incredible thing to run a show like that. And I've been doing mine for 3 years, the Danny Miranda podcast, wherever you get them. And yeah, I'm just honored to be here. So thank you.
Man. And like Danny agreed to do the show with no sponsorship, no nothing, any of that kind of shit. But I personally love Danny's podcast. So listen to the podcast. That's just a personal recommendation. I love the show. My favorite episode is episode 41, which is actually where someone interviewed Danny. So I think that's a good place to start if you want to learn more about Danny and how he thinks. But also, Art of Interviewing, Danny's course. It's really fucking good. I did the course. I just bought it. And there is so much tactical advice in there if you want to start a podcast that can just get you started. So it's worth it. Have a crack. If you're interested in starting a podcast, I think it might be the thing that will tip you over the edge to get going. So absolutely, go nuts, give it a crack. And on my plugs, start a podcast. I think starting a podcast is so fun. Everyone thinks it's a saturated space, but it's not even close to being saturated. So find your niche, do it, and just do it if it's fun for you. But also, like and subscribe, go to all the podcast platforms, go to YouTube, hit subscribe, hit like. Then, as I say in every episode, get your friends' phones, get your parents' phones, and steal a phone, which I also very much condone, and like it on their phones as well, and then give the phone back afterwards. That's totally fine, because they're also going to really enjoy listening to the podcast. This podcast is for everyone. Then, thanks everyone for your questions. If you've got questions you want us to answer, send them through to podcast@joelditrapani.com. And lastly, I love having conversations in this space. If you've got like product challenges or startup challenges, you're not sure where to go, let's have a call. I love meeting people. So, I've got a booking link in my calendar, in my show notes. Book some time with me. I'd be super, super excited to jump on a call. And that's it. We're going to wrap this one up. Danny, man, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for arguing and laughing with me. I've really loved this conversation today.
Likewise, man. Thank you for having me. And I love the unique concept you've brought to the podcasting space. Well done.
Cheers, man. Well, this has been another episode of the Do As I Say, Not As I Did podcast. We'll see you all next week.